Welcome to another episode of Jews in the World. I'm Phyllis Zimbler-Miller, and today I have with me a guest I'm very excited to talk to. Her name is Millie Jasper, and she's the executive director of the Holocaust and Human Rights Education Center in White Plains, New York. But what I really want to talk to her about is her program, Generations Forward, which she's going to explain to you, and then we're going to talk about it. So, floor is yours, Millie.
Thank you so much, Phyllis, and thank you for inviting me to your program. It's really an honor for me to be here. Generations Forward. Generations Forward is really a catch-all phrase for people who are descendants of Holocaust survivors. So it could be second generation children of survivors, third generation grandchildren, fourth generation, and so on. And the name came about at one of our very first meetings of second generation people, where we were trying to determine what were we trying to do and what should we call ourselves. And someone came up with Generations Forward because this program should endure for generation after generation. The purpose of Generations Forward is really so that the second, third, fourth generations have a community. And for the Holocaust and Human Rights Education Center, it's an avenue through which their family story can be related to the community, to the world.
Let me interrupt you a minute, because I want to get a little bit into what I think is so touching, that as survivors die out, who's going to tell their story? So I understand that you actually have been training, I don't know if training, coaching second and third generation who may never have spoken about their parents or other relatives' experiences, and giving them the courage and the tools to speak up. And so I want to talk about that. What has it been like? And I want to give you credit for spearheading the idea as part of a team, but what has it been like for these people, not always so young, to face for the first time having to talk about their family history?
Well, that's exactly right. What we did, this program's been in existence for almost 12 years. And what we did was we had Holocaust survivors who had children that they wanted to tell their stories. So we said to those children, who else do you know that is second generation? And they reached out to their friends. And then who else do we know? They reached out to their friends, and we gathered a group of people together. We all sat around and we questioned. I'd asked them, what is it you want to do? And what came out was, we want to be able to learn how to preserve our family story. We want to learn how to tell our family story. Because at that time, and still today, we haven't had an active Holocaust Survivors Speakers Bureau. But as we know, this generation is getting older, unable to speak somewhat, and become less and less available. We know the numbers, what they are. So they want to be able to tell their family story. That leads to how? Training. The number one thing to do is research. How do you research? We offer help in research.
Wait, again, I want to clarify. Sometimes people that came to you didn't know very much. And so when you say research, you literally help them learn more about their families, which I think is incredible. So can you give me an example, maybe,
Sure.
of someone who knew X but didn't know Y?
Yes. So we have several examples of people who they had the folklore. Their parents told them a little bit. They did have enough to get started. They had names, and they had places. And so we know enough to tell people where to go, where to do research, but it wasn't just us. It was the people in the group. And the groups were anywhere from 5 to 10 people, men and women, that would say, let me tell you how I researched my family. And then they would offer their resources, which are available throughout the world. And so they would gather the facts. After gathering the facts, they would write it down and learn how to present. Not everybody wants to present their story. A number of people just want to learn how to conserve the story and give it to their children. So we're happy with that. But this is a very important point, Phyllis. Each and every story is vetted for historical accuracy by our education department. And that's vital because Holocaust distortion is, it's terrible and it's out there, as you know, and we can't be guilty of any distortion. So we are careful with the facts. We don't know about the individual stories, but we know the rest of it.
I want to emphasize this because I started out in life as a journalist. I taught copy editing courses and news writing courses at Temple University. And why do I say this? I, whom basically self-taught on the Holocaust, find errors in the major published books all the time, in years, etc. And so I think that I'd like to emphasize that what you're doing here is making sure there aren't historical errors. What a family remembers. And I will also say, I'm just starting tomorrow a course on Holocaust diaries run through Spertus. I'm getting a master's in Jewish studies at a rather advanced age. And I just read an article about, diaries weren't taken seriously so much in the past, because it's a recollection. So I think it's very importantly to make this point here that whereas the family's recollections is one thing, dates, etc., your organization is checking.
Dates and locations and spellings.
Oh, spellings. Oh, spellings.
No, we're fastidious about it. And this is where most of the work comes in. It's this exact point that you're emphasizing, Phyllis. So I do appreciate that. The presentation is a whole different piece. And not everyone wants to or is interested in sharing their stories, but those that are, there is a specific class that they can take for that, and they need to narrow it down to a 20 to 40-minute presentation. So they got a lot of facts. They are taught how to narrow it down. And if they're going to use PowerPoint, we feel very strongly that they should have a map included.
100%. 100%. Preferably a map of what it was that year and which country it is today.
Exactly.
I have a question because I've just encouraged my second cousin, Bruce Dumas, who we thought we had no one in the Holocaust, and then we discovered, yes, we did have relatives murdered in the Holocaust. Our family's from Bishki, Latvia. But I've encouraged him to make sure that he makes it very clear, when Poland was divided by the Germans and the Russians, and then later when the Germans invaded Russia, all that time I see a lot of error. And so I think that's really important in presentations. And I'm sure that you're working on it, but I have a more important question. Can anyone learn this from you online, or do they have to be in White Plains, New York?
It's preferable to be local because what we prefer is to develop communities. See, for us, the second generation, the third generation, yes, you can do this online and we do have programs for that. But Phyllis, what's important about what's going on here is that the second generation, I'm going to call it second gen, the second generation community yearns to know each other, to be together. The second generation can walk into the group with other second gens. They don't have to explain who they are or where they're coming from. They're immediately at home. And they trust the Holocaust and Human Rights Education Center for its educational component. We even had one group of people that studied their program, their presentations together. They took themselves to Eastern Europe on their own to trace their family's origins. That's how close these people become, that they choose each other.
I'm going to give you a challenge. Could you have cohorts remotely? I think that your work is so important. And I agree about group encouragement. So I'm just challenging you to know whether there could be cohorts remotely that work together.
There can be. And we do work with another organization that is working on this remotely. And yes, absolutely. You don't have the same kind of connection because remote, I mean, look, during COVID, we all needed it, but now we crave to be with each other. So it's not the same. It's not the same. However, the answer to your question, and it's a good question, is yes.
Hey,
Um,
Another clarification that you told me before we started is I asked if the center was a museum and you explained that it was an outreach. So what's the origin of this center? You want to talk about that?
Sure. The origin of the Holocaust and Human Rights Education Center is that a group of people in 1990 decided that we needed something in Westchester to mark the Holocaust. And so they created the Garden of Remembrance, which still stands, which is very important in White Plains.
Is it
And
outside? It's an outside
yes,
garden, obviously a
it's an
garden.
outside garden and it's next to the county office building, the Westchester County office building. It's on their land. We maintain the grounds, they maintain the statues. Just 2 weeks ago, we were the proud recipient of an Anne Frank chestnut sapling, which went into the garden, and we had a dedication there.
Where did the sapling come from?
The Anne Frank Center USA, and it was being housed in Indiana. So it came to us, and we had a wonderful ceremony for that, and that's where it's going to stand. There's a dedication and a plaque there, but there are other important pieces of that garden. There's a large sculpture by Rita Rappaport, which is the Gates of Remembrance, very important piece of art. Other things. So that's how it started. And then they said, well, what do we want to do? And they decided, no, we're not going to be in the museum. We have museums in New York City. Westchester County isn't that far from New York City. A lot of us commute. I don't any longer, but a lot of people do.
Okay.
We want to be educational outreach. And so they thought for years, what does that look like? And today what it looks like is that we are physically in the schools with programming for educators. Our major thing is to teach the educators, but we also have human rights institutes for high school students and middle school students. So it's teaching the lessons learned from the Holocaust, about human rights. We're very busy.
So this is throughout Westchester County, correct?
It's throughout Westchester. It is throughout neighboring counties. And since COVID, frankly, it's been throughout the United States. So we do a lot of remote work as well.
And I always like to help institutions I'm talking with. So I take it you're funded by donations, right? We should encourage people to support your work. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're funded primarily through donations. We do have some funding that comes in from the various agencies in New York State, but our primary fund source is private donations. We have a lot of donors. Not every donor is a large donor, but every donor is an important donor.
Tell me about yourself, how you got involved. Do you have a connection? Are you a second generation or just tell us your story?
Interesting, Phyllis, I am not a second generation.
Neither am I.
But, right, like you, we have, I think we're probably speaking for both of us, we've always been pulled to the Holocaust through the way we were raised, just through our life's experiences. And when this position opened up, I applied for it and I was hired. But I really consider this an extension of volunteer work because it speaks to who I am and everything I do. And I've been a volunteer mostly in the Jewish world, but not all, since I was, a young mother. So, yeah, that's really what it is with this organization and me. It feels very, very good, very comfortable. And I've been a member of many boards. I have to tell you, this board is the most committed, the most generous, the most intelligent group of people I've ever worked with.
Do you think it's partly the topic? I mean, the cause or whatever we can call it.
Yeah, I do.
If you had a magic wand, what would be the next program you'd like to do? You must have a wish list, I suspect. Maybe not.
Yeah, so the next program would really be to expand the program. And it's interesting you're speaking to me about this today because we would like to expand the second generation reach. We have a lot of trained second gens and a lot of second gens who are batting up right now. They're learning how to do it, but we don't we don't really have the strong outreach, and a lot of it would have to be remote. So we have to figure out what does that look like? How is it impactful? You know, we find that second gens are really important in speaking to students. As you mentioned, that they're approachable. They can relate to the younger people can understand them. And as an aside, just a secondary thing, Phyllis, many survivors have accents, and young people have difficulty with accents.
Young people, I have to use the even when I watch a British detectives on TV, I have to watch the subtitles. Let's be honest there. It's not just young
Yeah,
people.
yeah. So the second gens, and we always encourage second gens to talk about how has the Holocaust impacted their lives? How have they become who they are because of their parents, their grandparents?
And yes,
And
I was going to ask you about
yeah,
that. To me, that seems to be one of the most important areas that they can talk to young people about.
it's relatable.
Very
It's
much so.
relatable. Yeah, it really is. And also, um, all of our second gens speak about their families with compassion. Some speak with strong love. Others they're not sure what to make of it, or they are sure, but they have to be careful with how they make it, what they make of it. But in each case, we vet the stories for the appropriate age. For example, we have one story that deals very strongly with mental illness. And that's not appropriate for young students, meaning sixth, seventh graders. That's as young as we'll go. But it is appropriate for the older students.
Now, are you doing any work in colleges at the moment?
Yes, we are. We're doing work with the local colleges, and also that's an interesting thing. I want you to know that the colleges across the country are calling us and asking us to send our Holocaust survivors, not second gens. And so we have a few that are very happy to hop on a plane and go out to the Midwest, go to the southern parts of the United States. They're very happy to do this, and they go and they speak.
That's wonderful. Now, have you worked with them about what to say for age appropriateness also? I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, we vet everyone. So with the Holocaust survivors, we know them very, very well. And we know yes, the answer is yes, we do vet. We know to what group they can speak and which ones they should not. And it's really the same with the second gens.
And you brought up mental health. I know several people who worked for Steven Spielberg's foundation early on, transcribing the testimony. And I know one of the things available to them was mental health counseling, because to listen to this testimony all the time. So is there a mental health component to help second generation? And again, we mean second generations, including other generations, who suddenly find that the emotions brought up are very hard to handle.
Yes, every so often we'll run a group through a licensed social worker who is well versed in transmission of trauma. It's real. Our second and third gens really do appreciate that. They gain some insight and they can ask questions of a professional. So not only that, but our staff has gone through the training because
And
we work with
let me
survivors
just
and second gens.
re-emphasize in case people miss that word transmission. And I've read articles about how trauma is transmittable from Holocaust survivors. Even survivors have tried very hard not to transmit any trauma. So that's why I wanted to know if this was available, this mental health counseling. Because I just read a quote yesterday. I spent all day yesterday looking at my various news sources that Diane von Furstenberg. Okay.
Yes, I read that. I
Yes.
saw that
Okay.
article.
Yes. Said that she was asked to speak to ADL and Anti-Defamation League, and she found herself talking about her mother's Auschwitz survivor experience, and she was startled herself. She was so startled that she'd never really thought about how it impacted her. And I think that that's very important. And the former mayor of Beverly Hills, just the outgoing Lily Bosses, mother's also an Holocaust survivor, and it's clearly influenced her entire life and what she's done.
Right.
And in my case, my husband and I were stationed in Munich, Germany from September 70 to May 72, coming from non-Holocaust families, but living in Germany only 25 years after the end of World War II, just after the end of the Holocaust, changed our trajectory forever. So I think that when people, I hate this word enter, can come together, but when they do, it can change their life. And then how do you make that a positive change?
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you.
So we're coming close to the end. We have a few more minutes, but I really want how we can encourage other people to emulate your program. Since you say it's important to do it in person, if possible.
If possible.
Are you are you available to coach other Jewish organizations in other cities, just how they can copy in a positive way your program?
The answer is yes. We're expanding our online offerings. So the answer is yes. And I have some people who've contacted me, and we're talking about what to do about that. But yes, we are going to expand the online access to this kind of work. It's really very important. It helps everyone. It helps everyone. It helps the presenter as well as it helps, whoever hears the stories.
What are just people like stories? So can you tell us a couple of maybe interesting things that people discovered about their families from research?
Um, a couple of interesting things. Gosh, every story is so, it's not, no, the answer is I can't really answer that exactly, but I can tell you that a number of people have an awakening within themselves, that they realize now why they're afraid of loud noises. Well, they didn't hear the sirens, but their mother talked about it. Or why they do have nightmares. Well, their fathers didn't have nightmares. Why do they have nightmares? So there's an awakening, and they bring it back to this. I will tell you that we have a wonderful program that started during COVID called Memory Keepers Story Hour, where we would bring our presenters to speak online every week, once a week, every Thursday it was at the time. And we would, from 7 to 8, we would have a program, and they would tell their story for 20 to 40 minutes with a Q&A, always a 1-hour program. It started with 50 people showing up. And then in a few months, it was 75 or 80. And before you knew it, it was 100, 150. And we had a lot of followers and a lot of new people. And now, over the last couple of years, we've been doing it once a month. And we have a solid 150, 200 people sign up for it, followers and new people. Every story is different. Every story is important. And people, to your point, people like stories. They want to hear it. And you can trust from us that these stories are factually accurate.
Yes, which I think is very important. I don't get paid for this. I'm just teasing, but I want to plug a book that I read by Daniel Mendelsohn, Sohn, The Lost, The Search for Six of the 6 Million. I found that, I mean, I have read a lot, especially since the pandemic. I have a whole Google document of all the Holocaust documentaries and books I've read in the last 4 years, quite a long document, but his is an amazing account. So for anyone who wants to be, it is a thick book. Anyone who wants to encourage and is not quite, needs a little push to understand how important this could be, I recommend that book. And I recommend that we all undertake this. I mean, it's because of Daniel Mendelsohn that I finally realized that I had the answer to what's the first name of my great-great-grandmother who was killed in a pogrom in Romania. And I had the documents all along, which enabled me to figure out in probability, because Jews name for deceased relatives, what her name was. But I didn't realize I had all the pieces until after I read that book. So
Wow.
that's what you're teaching people, right?
Yes.
Some of these documents say what the mother's, well, in my case, it was the names of her grandchildren. So I figured out one was the mother of, never mind, it's complicated, but really, if people are trained, they can do this. And now I remember her at Yisker because I think it's important to remember these people.
That's right. It is important.
And so you're giving people the tools to do this, which I think is amazing. Plus, being able to educate people. Now, we have a few more minutes. I'm just curious because I work with high school kids in Elgin, Illinois, my hometown. I'm in Beverly Hills, and they're not Jewish and they don't basically know any Jews. I mean, Elgin's got very few Jews.
Right.
What's the difference in your reception? Can you tell between Jewish groups and non-Jewish groups when your speakers go out? I'm just curious.
What is the difference? There is not really much of a difference, except the non-Jewish kids are very polite, very open, they have questions. They raise their hands, they ask questions. There really isn't a big difference with that. Interestingly enough, in a lot of cases, we find in both groups, older kids or younger kids, it's the younger kids that ask the questions.
Interesting. And what can you
Yeah.
give us any examples? I know I didn't give her questions ahead of time, so I'm putting her on the spot. But are there any examples of questions? I'm just curious what the younger kids might ask.
Yeah, so I was at an assembly a few years ago where one of our beloved survivors was speaking to mostly seventh and eighth graders, so that's young. And one girl in the back stood up and she said, I just feel so bad for you. I just feel so bad for you, and I feel so bad for your family. How do you go on?
Mm,
Now that's quite a question, isn't it?
that's quite a question.
So the survivor heard it the way it was given, and was very honest, and positive in her answer. It was a good answer.
And a good answer for a student even not facing a Holocaust trauma. So
That's right.
this learning that these children are so lucky to have from your organization goes beyond just the Holocaust.
It does. We're the Holocaust and Human Rights Education Center. We go beyond the Holocaust. I started with, we teach the lessons learned from the Holocaust. And part of that is how to treat each other nicely. What does hate look like? What does hate speech look like? What does a hate symbol look like? What does it signify? When a kid draws a swastika, our question to the kid, and we do counsel kids who do this, do you identify with, this is what being a Nazi means. Do you identify with that?
Wait. This is so important. Something that I'm working on here in Beverly Hills. Do you mean that when kids are caught drawing swastikas, they are counseled by you? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, what happens is, in our opinion and in the administration's opinion, the schools, it doesn't do much good if you expel a child. If
Exactly. Go
the
ahead.
child will learn not to do the same thing in the exact same way again. Good, they taught them that by expelling them. What we do is we bring them into this office. We're a third party. We are not judgmental. And we look at this kid, it could be sixth grade up to really young college, and we say, what'd you do? And then they tell us, really, they just tell us what they did. And we talk about it, and it depends. If it's something having to do with anti-Semitism, we have a marvelous film that we show them that we produced years ago with Eli Wallach was the speaker in it, of local Holocaust survivors. And we talk about it, and they do thought papers, and we discuss it. And I will tell you, Phyllis, we have a 100% success rate in that we follow these kids. They do not do this again in the classrooms or in the schools. They learn. They didn't know. For the most part, they say to us, honestly, I didn't know. I didn't realize.
Exactly. I'm sure the kid in ninth grade geometry class who turned around and told me a Jewish joke which I didn't even get right away, had no idea. He was just parroting. So this is so important. And I don't want to say a little bit, because we are, without giving too much away, trying to work out here with some school system. How did you get the school administration to do this? We're trying to figure out how we can get the school administrations to understand.
I'll tell you how to do it. You have to have one-on-one meetings with the principals. Yes, the superintendents, but it's the principals that work with the kids. You need one-on-one meetings, and you need to have a plan that you've outlined, and you have to show them what you're trying to do, how you're trying to do it, and you don't charge them.
Yeah,
And
we didn't have any intention of charging.
yeah,
We just,
you'll get it through the one-on-one meetings with the principal. You'll get it. You'll get them. We've had some through family court, but that's more difficult because it's court stuff. But through the schools directly, they're happy to send them to us, and the parents are happy. We've had parents come with the kids and see
think
what
that's
we're teaching the
important.
kids. Yeah.
Okay, when we're done with this interview, I may ask you some more questions because there have been some reports of private schools, particularly around this area, that are just, the incidents are really upsetting. And good, suspending, exactly, it doesn't do anything. So the group that I'm, grassroots group, we're very much interested in how to convince principals you have to educate. So I am so thrilled to talk to you and for you to share your wisdom. Is there anything else that you would like to share that you think can encourage other people to speak up, to take action?
Well, we started our talk with the second generation group. I encourage everyone to look locally and see if there is a second gen group to meet, to connect with on a one-to-one basis in person. And if not, or even if so, connect with us. And we're happy to extend our community.
And we will I will put at the bottom of the description of this talk when I upload it to YouTube, the URL, so you'll know how to connect with Millie's organization. And please be inspired by this talk, because what she's doing is so very important. She and her team, okay, just let's be honest here, but I'm just so happy that you came on the show and you shared with us. Thank you so very much. I can't thank you enough. Bye.
Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you for the opportunity.